Well, Jim, let's get some more questions here on the show. And this next one, another very popular topic, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Chuck in Long Island, New York. Happy New Year to you both. I wanted to get your thoughts on the recent news that the Pro Wrestling Torch let Bruce Mitchell go after a column he posted on John Huber's death that suggested that AEW was covering up the fact that he actually died of COVID-19. Wade Keller put out a statement stating that besides the fact that Bruce had little evidence to back it up, the column also didn't go through the normal vetting and editing process.
Yeah, yada, 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 yank me, pull me.
I guess that's the big question there, and a lot of people have sent in questions. Bruce Mitchell, 30 years with the Pro Wrestling Torch, no longer with the Pro Wrestling Torch. And it's
30 years with it's 30 years with IBM, and all they gave him was a wristwatch. 30 years of writing for a cheap knockoff publication that later became a cheap knockoff website for a guy just like him that likes to manufacture crises. And this is what I was talking about here, because I knew somebody was going to ask about it, because so many people have. I knew you were going to bring it up. What I had to think about it, or what I had to say about it. And basically, here's another guy that I've been saying for 25 years was a lying sack of shit. And now people have just figured out that he was a lying sack of shit. So am I surprised? No. I'm surprised it took this long. Bruce Mitchell has for a long time thought that he was either Bob Woodward or Carl Bernstein or some kind of crusading reporter. And what he does is he takes some issue and he figures out some reason why somebody should be outraged or upset about it, whether there is any reason or not, and whether the facts fit that. And then he crusades against it. And that's the same reason that I haven't spoken to him in 25 years. And that's the same reason that most people don't speak to him, or you said the vetting processes like the Pro Wrestling Torch is the New York Times or the Washington Post or NBC News or Newsweek magazine or whatever the case. I guarantee you, Wade Keller liver lip laganted him. He'd read the thing beforehand. He probably, if he hadn't read it, he didn't care what Bruce Mitchell said, because Bruce Mitchell is the only person for the past 30 years that's been able to tolerate Wade Keller. Because Wade Keller gave Bruce Mitchell a platform to fabricate shit and make up manufactured crises. And those crises led people to read Wade Keller's fucking Red Scare website. They deserve each other. But another person that I said was a piece of shit for 25 years, suddenly everybody in unison says, hey, this guy's a piece of shit. How could we have known? I read this column, and at first, going into it, for the first half of it, I'm like, what the fuck? Why is anybody upset? It sounds like Brodie Lee's press agent wrote this, the most glowing review of the guy as a person and as a talent and everything he had done. And then when he takes the left turn, then I realized, yeah, he got everybody. He hooks everybody with all these nice things he's saying about this guy and praising him. And we're all together in this. He's on our side, right? And then he branches off into lunacy. Lunacy. After he praises the guy to the heavens, he then says, but AEW and WWE had already been compromising pandemic health standards by gathering in Florida to even have events. It's no secret that both companies, WWE in particular, have not been transparent as to the consequences to the people involved of even putting on these shows. What the fuck? The reason why I'm sure they came out and even qualified the reason why Brodie Lee passed away by saying it was a non-COVID related issue is because since that's been the big news for the past year, one would think that if you hear about anybody dying, unless they're hit by a truck, it's COVID. So they specifically said that so people would at least know that much. But otherwise, the guy had asked, he didn't have any publicity on this. The guy had asked, don't make a big deal out of it. The guy's wife wants to be, I'm sure, even more private right now than this whole thing has been to begin with, and for the kids and everything else. And then this fucking weasel tries to start a crusade that somehow AEW should come clean and tell the entire story and all the guy's medical details, because he equates this to the WWE reaction after the Chris Benoit murder-suicide for a strong, irresponsible example. That's a quote of wrestling companies covering up health risk involved in the lifestyles and standards the business often requires. What the fuck is he talking about? This doesn't apply to this poor guy. He actually, and I'm reading some of this because I want you to know what kind of a fucking Weasley prick this guy is. He talks about Brodie Lee's wife issuing a statement thanking the doctors and the Mayo Clinic and etc., and that he died after a hard-fought battle with a non-COVID related lung issue. And Mitchell says that leaves the issue, though, of why Brodie Lee, his family, and AEW kept such a tight lid on information during his illness. Because it wasn't none of your fucking business. And then he goes on to say that, well, people who have had COVID-19 have gotten lung damaged that remained after the virus had left their system. Could this be what his wife meant, that he had already recovered from a bout and was then suffering for this lung issue? Why the fuck would it be any of your business? And that's specifically what they didn't say to begin with. And who gives a fuck? How is this the time for this? You piece of shit weasel. And he goes on for paragraph after paragraph, belaboring these people for not being more transparent, and that there's some cover-up going on here, and that the whole company and everybody involved in this is obviously part of a goddamn public health crisis conspiracy. The closing paragraph. Whatever the circumstances, Brodie Lee's family and AEW both would serve his memory best by being forthright, whatever they are. This is poorly written anyway. About all the circumstances surrounding his death, thereby honoring him by allowing us all to make the best informed decisions possible, protecting everyone's health. What decisions protecting our health are we going to make or not make, because we don't know Brodie Lee's medical history? The poor guy died. Leave him alone. Leave his wife alone. You fucking idiot. You self-absorbed, self-righteous, fucking fictitious crusader, you. I loathe you. So he's doing the same shit he's been doing for 25 years, but now finally everybody was like, you know what, this fucking guy, fuck him. And when you get fired off the pro wrestling torch, for God's sake, the journalistic standards that they uphold, good fucking God.
Did you see his wife, Brodie Lee's wife, put out
I've never seen Bruce Mitchell's wife. I don't believe that exists.
Brodie Lee's wife put out a statement. Several people retweeted it. Cash Wheeler retweeted it, I saw. Basically, just explaining what she's been going through, and then it addressed this. So it did get to her. It did impact her. And I think that's what's really unfair about this whole thing. Why should she have to deal with...
Yeah, she had to put out a statement defending her decision not to fucking tell the world that her husband was in the hospital on the verge of death because he didn't want people to know that. For fuck's sake. You know how you're going to know when I'm dead? You won't ever hear of me or see of me ever again, but I ain't going to make a goddamn announcement. Well, I guess I wouldn't make one anyway. I'm going to encourage there not to be any announcements made. Just all the, where's Cornette? We haven't seen him lately.
And I'll say this too, in terms of the way AEW handled this, there's a lot we could say about AEW's booking and talent or whatever it may be. I think Tony Khan did a fantastic job with honoring Brodie Lee on that episode they did. And obviously he has been working with the family for a few months. They kept this quiet, which is remarkable in the wrestling business.
Yeah. And we mentioned that. That's the biggest tribute of all, that everybody liked this guy so much. In wrestling, they kept a secret. They honored this guy's wishes and tried to protect his family. And that's amazing. And somebody said, "Oh, Cornette, now you got to cut a promo because they signed Brodie Lee Jr. to a contract. He's 8 years old. What about that? You're going to cut a promo?" Well, no, I'm not going to cut a promo on that. He's not going to be wrestling next week on the fucking program. Here's another thing that they did, and Tony Khan should be complimented for or saluted for. If they signed his 8-year-old son to a contract, and I believe I even saw the comment that if he chooses to become a wrestler, then we'll be here for him. Well, he's 8 years old and fucking hopefully 14 years when he finishes college. Who knows whether there's going to be wrestling or not, much less any specific company. But if they signed him to a contract, especially if there's some type of cash payment, not big payment, but a check that can be put in an account, a trust fund for the kid, for his education, whatever, and then he can decide years from now when he's an adult if he wants to be a wrestler, that kind of contract that ain't going to hurt a billionaire, yeah, sign the kid to a contract. What's wrong with that? That doesn't mean he's going to be wrestling next Wednesday on the fucking program. So I think that's another thing that that AEW ought to be applauded for doing something for the family. And I guess they probably announced it because the kid, it'll give the kid a bigger kick. I don't know that Vince McMahon would ever do something like that. I know he wouldn't announce it. He probably wouldn't do it.
Well, I know a lot of people are probably wondering about your thoughts on the AEW tribute episode. You actually didn't watch it. You had a period of time where you tried to avoid any active wrestling.
Yes, and here's the thing. It's on the DVR. I haven't watched it. I've had a busy couple of weeks, as we talked about, but also I said I wasn't going to watch any wrestling, and that's a no-win situation. I even said on where we talked about his passing, I said they can do whatever they want on their television program. I don't care. I'm not going to critique it. I'm not going to take the piss out of it. I can do that on regular programs all day long. I'm not going to critique their tribute program.
Well, what I was going to say is there were a lot of really, really touching moments in that episode. I think Tony Khan and AEW did a beautiful job paying tribute to Brodie Lee with that episode. It's tough to mix the tribute stuff with trying to actually have a wrestling show in the midst of that. And I thought they did a great job, but to your earlier point.
Well, yeah, and let me just say that I may watch it at some point, but especially over the last couple of weeks, I didn't want to watch any more sad tribute stuff, for anybody.
To your earlier point, Brodie Lee's son was sitting ringside, and they let him get involved in what I thought wasn't anything bad. And then at the end of the show, he was in the ring. And that was one of the big takeaways, was how much this all meant to his son. In a lot of ways, this show was on TV. This show was for the wrestlers who were grieving, the wrestling fans who were grieving, and it was a big topic amongst wrestling fans. But I actually saw this tribute episode as being for his son as much as anybody. And again, Tony Khan and AEW did a great job, and it's a shame that not only did Bruce Mitchell write that column, but he doubled down and tripled down and quadrupled down on defending it, even after Wade Keller pulled it down.
They took it off the Torch site, and Wade dumped him, and I heard he went and printed it somewhere else and defended, no, this was good, this should have been done.
Yeah. And then reportedly he deleted his Twitter.
Oh, I hate to hear that.
How does it feel to you when someone you have, hate is a strong word, but someone you have hated for 25 years, when all of a sudden everyone catches up to you?
I just wonder why it took so long for people to realize this, because his writing has always been the same thing. Find some reason for somebody to be outraged about something, whether it exists or not, and then fire everybody up. And for a while, people bought it. But, unfortunately, Bruce Mitchell is just a fucking mealy-mouthed, disreputable-looking boy. I know he's the same. He's younger than me. He looks like he's goddamn decomposing as we speak. And he has for a long time. And he's a little fucking weasel that fucking wanders around and hides in the corners and tries to figure out a way to knock people. And I'm glad that now people are fucking figuring this out.